her the wife's action should be appreciated because she's trying her level best to reduce the burdens and the sadness in her husband's mind, and she is of course uh, exemplary for the spouses to be much more attentive and alert for the needs and the worries, and it is the true nature of a strong martial bonds. And when we look at the fifth stanza, it is obvious that the wife is all funny. Uh, Wife's all funny performances before her husband ended up in failure, and he continues his worries and does not reveal how he really feels and what is bothering him inside. And that means that he does not like to disclose his internal suffering to his wife and share them with his wife. And instead, he just sits and mutters almost to himself. It is not clear why he does not reveal his wife about the burdens and the cause for his suffering and mourning. And we can assume that he loves his wife is so much that he does not want to fill up her mind with his own problems and burdens that makes him suffer a lot. Otherwise, he may think that his wife is not mature enough to shoulder and carry all these problems. And thus, the poet has let us arrive at their own conclusions logically in this regard. And when we look at the sixth stanza, the wife reveals what her husband mutters in himself through his own words. And he surely worried about his life. He says what he would do without his wife. This implies that he also loves his wife very much, and he admires her role as a wife. And he may think that his life would be much more bitter and boring without his wife. Nevertheless, there is an inversion in the end of the line, and or else it would be much more tender-hearted if the husband could express, "What would I do without my wife?" Some may analyze this expression in relation to Anglo-Caribbean accent, and however, the end phase without this clone of wife seems to imply a certain emotional distance from the husband's character more than the wife. Let's look at the themes of the poem. And here the poet points out how people hide their true nature and true identity and put on a happy face before the public or the workplace or the other places. And therefore, it is difficult to judge a person's true nature only by her or his appearance. And hence, the theme is conveyed in the poem is duality in life or appearance versus reality. And this theme is common not only to clone's life, but also there are a lot of people in our society who really suffer due to socio-economic problems or family problems or other problems, and therefore their reality is completely different from their expectations and the way they appear in their public life and the way the expressions they express. And another theme conveyed in the poem is family bonds. In a family, husband and wife should have a strong bond, and they should have a mutual understanding and a strong love and affection between them. And they should not hide anything from each other, and they should uh, solve any problem by discussing together. But in this poem, it is ironic that the wife really loves her husband and she's genuinely worried about her husband's suffering, but her husband is not telling his burdens or uh, or not telling his sadness to his his sadness to his wife, and the wife sacrifices his time, energy, and pleasure for the husband's happiness, and nevertheless, her husband suffers alone without revealing the true cases and true reasons for his worries, and his behavior uh, suggests that his behavior suggests that he is a complicated uh, and an unexpressing character. He also seems to have love for her, but at the same time, there is a little bit distance in sharing the worries with his wife and uh, seeking the solution. And the husband is like an introvert, and uh, husband is like an introvert. And another theme conveyed uh, here is, as I already said, family bonds. And here, the poet also uh, mentions or mentions all the themes like family bonds, problems, the weak family bonds, and uh, appearance versus reality in accordance with the today's society. And because today's society, nowadays society has the problems, family problems, because of the lack of mutual understanding and other problems. There are a lot of problems in the modern society compared to the old society. Moreover, uh, it is not advisable for a person to hide his emotions for a long time without expressing them. Uh, they cannot keep them inside for a long period, because at some point it will burst out, and they will show their expressions at the peak. And we should not uh, and also we should not release and show our expressions uh, and our burdens and on our family members, relations, and friends, and so on. And uh, when analyzing the social factors for the clown suffering, perhaps the clown may think that, as I already said, the clown may think that his job is a disgrace for him in the society, uh, and a disgrace for his also for his family. Especially a profession of a person is a yardstick to measure his personality, prestige, wealth, and so on in modern market economic system. And all the social values depend on the commercial factors rather than the person's moral value or the spiritual value or his uh, honest uh, honesty. And therefore this clown may feel as an inferiority complex to introduce himself as clone, and he also may think that it is a disgrace even for his children. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you to our senior student master Dhavarasa Devihan for your wonderful presentation. It will be help us to our future English literature studies. Next, I would like to call Ms. Arnavi Sridhar to talk about the poem War is Kind.
Good evening to you all. Today I'm going to talk about a heart-wrenching poem which was written by the American writer A War is Kind. A War is Kind by Stephen Crane indicates the psychological tournament which the dying soldiers and their loving ones are enduring instead of focusing on the glory and the heroic attitude in the battlefield. As many people think that soldiers are going for the battlefield for the glory, this poem ironically portrays it is not a glory for the soldiers to die in the battlefield. Stephen Crane became fascinated with the issues of the century that were facing many issues from the war and this war. It was published in 1899, less than a year before the Stephen Crane died. Stephen Crane was born in America. He had a first-hand experiences in a war as a war reporter, and his famous novel, The Red Badge of the Courage, also relevant to this theme of civil war, which makes him more famous during these days. As we all know that as a war first-hand reporter, he has many experiences about the war, and he has faced many soldiers who died very harshly and sympathetically in the battlefield. Not like an ordinary people. Stephen Crane ironically and satirically mentioned the reality of the battlefield as a reporter. As a reporter in a civil war, he has seen many soldiers and their unhealthy condition in the trenches and their hard practices for the battlefield. And he realized that the world who know about the soldiers are less than when we enters into the battlefield. We only when we enters into the battlefield we can get a full detail of the soldiers and how they are harshly died because of the battlefields. World is thinking that the soldiers are dying for their glory and dying for their mother nation, and it's very holy thing and the glory to die for the mother nation. But when we focus in each and every soldier's life, we can understand that their pains and their loving ones' pains are more powerful than the glory to the country. Many people think that dying for the country is it's okay than than the pain of dying. But we all have to understand that our human lives are precious, and when it used in a correct way, it is so precious. But here, the young soldiers' lives are uselessly wasted in the battlefield because only for the glory. But finally, we all know that the war is useless, and it takes many people's life without any reasons. So we can suggest that the title of the poem "War is Kind." War, we all know that the war is not kind. So the title of this poem and the tone of the starting of the poem is paradoxical and ironical. And when we start the first stanza, the writer addresses the maiden who suggests as an unmarried woman who is a lover of the soldier who died in the battlefield. Battlefield is a place where many people lost their precious human life, and here the image of the dying soldier and the pain of the person who is connected with him clearly portrayed. As the young woman who is loving that soldier, in this situation, he has lost her life. She lost her life. The riderless horse, which comes along to the home, indicates the harshness of the war. Your lover to your lover put the hands towards the sky, which indicates that the soldier is meaninglessly and harshly died because of the civil war. In war, there is no help. Most innocents are being died in civil war without their knowing. So war can be an option to get our needs or get a solution for anything. War is not about who is right. It's only about who is left, and and we can understand that the tone of this first stanza is very ironic, and Poet consolation for the weeping maiden indicates that poets want to encourage the unmarried woman about her great loss of life. But we all know that the pain of the maiden was unbearable as she lost the life, as she lost her life because she lost her love. So we can conclude that war gives us an unbearable pain in our lives. In this situation, in this first, according to the first stanza, we can understand that war didn't not only take the life of the soldier, but also take the happiness and the bright future of the young woman as well. So we can understand that war didn't give the sadness or the harsh feelings to the people who are dying. Uh, Beyond that, the war gives the feelings of sadness and sympathy to the people who are connected with them, who are mostly connected with them. And the great battle goat in the second stanza referred to as a goat mask, the god of the war in Roman mythology, by saying that these men were born to drill and die, which is, I think, this is the most powerful quote in this poem, as it emphasizes and it demonstrates the reality of the young soldiers who are dying each and every day in the battlefield. And the little souls are the metaphors which draws the attention to the soldiers. And here the poet shows the image of the soldier as a robot who is programmed to do all the things which are ordered for them. Here, the soldiers' feelings are caged, and they are treated like robots who don't have any feelings. The emotions of the soldiers are insulted, and they are used as slaves. The sound of the loud drums indicates the harshness of the battlefield, and alerts the readers to understand the alerts the readers to find the curious of the war and understand the harshness of the war. These men were born to kill and die. This quote indicates the soldiers are facing their death faster than other people in this ordinary world. We all know that soldiers are not like ordinary people. Here, according to the poem, according to this quote, we can understand that soldiers are born to die, and their purpose of their borning is dying. So they don't have any alternatives to live their life. They only have to drill and only have to die because for their mother nation. Here, the drilling may be the practices which are given in the battlefield, the mud practice and the target shooting in the battlefields. It is easy to say that the mud games and the trenches activities and the target shootings are target shootings in 3 words, but the experiences of the soldiers in the practices are unbearable, and we can't express the pains of the soldiers during this practice. And in that situation, the soldiers are treated like the uh, animals. And every people in this world are born to succeed in their lives, and their life seems as unlimited for them, and they have many freedoms to do whatever they want. But here the soldiers born to die in wars, the soldiers are mentioned as useless for them. Here the image of the war is drawn as meaningless and characterless. The soldiers' birth is only for the beneficial need of their country. And when we start to analyze the third stanza, we can understand the similar pattern of the first stanza. In it, the speaker asks a baby who may be the son or daughter of the dying soldier in the battlefield, mirroring the request of the poem's opening line as "Do not weep." After telling that the baby's father died violently in a jello trench, The speaker ironically states that war is not a kind thing. As we all, as the color symbol here used as yellow is used as associated with the sickness or the disease, the phrase yellow trench indicates the unhealthy condition of the soldiers uh, in the trenches in civil war. We all know this. Soldiers mostly spend their life in the trenches. As here the yellow color indicates the sickness, it suggests the soldiers in America, the writer's country, mostly died because of the yellow fever in unhealthy trenches, where the poet also suspected. We all know that when we analyze the poet's background, he also suspected with the yellow fever, as he has a first-hand experience in the wartime. He also may he also may have get the disease because of the war situations and during the war times. And the here the yellow is indicate the yellow fever, where for why many people, many soldiers die in the trenches. The soldiers' plights are well portrayed. Plights for their country, plights for serving their country are well portrayed through these stanzas. At the same time, we can understand that the war is not only give the grief to the people who are involving in the battlefield. As I told you earlier, it gives the sorrow to the people who are off to the battlefield. Here we can understand that the baby loses its emotional support in the small age, during its small age, and it affects its life till its rest of the life. As we all understand that for the children, their parents are the emotional support and their support. Whenever they have to do anything or they have to fulfill their dreams, they must need their parents. But here we can understand that as the soldier is a father, he also died in the battlefield. And here the baby, even in the small age, uh, uh, she lost her emotional support, she lost her big support in the life. So we can understand that the war didn't come as a beacon for the problems. It can only give the struggles and sorrow to the people who are in and off to the battlefield. And when we return to the um, when we when we analyze the fourth stanza, we can understand that we are returning into the heart of the battlefield, where the flags are blazes brightly in the sky. Then the poet states that these men were born to try, and it is a repetition. It seems as a repetition which indicates the cruelty of the war, which used the soldiers as the victims, and it used the soldiers and their family, their loving ones as the victims. In this stanza, the flag can be seen to represent the society and the war situation, while the previous stanzas have been focused in the brutality of the war and the people who are uh, out of people who are affected by the war, the loving ones who are affected by the war. This stanza points out the cruelty and the indifference of the society that knowingly, purposefully sends its young men to die and kill others. It projects that the some people are in favor of war, and in the other hand, some people are against the war. But here, according to this poem, the poet indicates that most of the people in the society can't understand the cruelty of the war because of such mentalities. Moreover, we all know that in battlefields, we can understand that most people are young people. Young people are mostly sent to the battlefield. And in search of the peace for the country gradually loses its future lights in the battlefield. And it's irony that peace can't be given by the battlefield, as unless we don't have any experience in the war soon, we can understand and realize the real harsh face of the war and the reality of the war. Here we can understand that as the young people who have to serve the country by their knowledge, they are knowingly sent to the battlefield to fight to each other. And some such majority of the people think that only war can give the happiness. But when we start the war, we can understand that not only the people who we can understand that we lose two sides of the people. Not only one side of people were killed by the battlefield. The two sides of the people are affected, and their families are affected. And as we consider, as the humans' lives are considered as precious blessing and precious gift for the one's country's development, many wiseful people and many intelligent people uh, may be killed in the battlefield. And I think it is it degrees the path for our development path. And here, when the writer wrote this poem, we can understand the society. Some people convince the youngsters by telling the war as a kind thing, and some believe that it is a glory to die in the battlefield. As we can understand that when we glance at the poem "The Charge of the Light Brigade" by the poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, he tells that when the 600 soldiers are enters into the battlefield, we can't get the same ones in return. Sometimes we get 60 soldiers, and sometimes we get 100 soldiers. We can't get the people who full amount of the people who went to the battlefield, which portrays the harsh and the reality of the battlefield. And here we can understand that the Stephen Crane also tries to convey this fact in the different point of view than the Alfred Lord Tennyson. But dying for the country is, in my point of view, dying for the country is not a solution for the country's problem. There are many alternatives ways to get peace and get uh, get a nice solution when the country nice solution for the problems. But when the countries afford to do the battles to get peace, it can't be the right option to get peace. It's only lead us to the world of darkness and put the country in the ditch. And when we analyze the fifth and the fifth and the final stanza, it reverts us to the ultimate setting of the battlefield. The speaker, as in the first and the third stanza, the speaker implores a mother whose heart is humble as a button. Here, humble as a button is a metaphor, and here the poet seems to convince the mother's feeling not to worry, not to weep, because your son is died in the battlefield, and it's a glory. And here it's not seen here it seems as irony. The comparison of the mother's love to something as insignificant as a small button in the uniform represents the war, in which the war which ignores the experiences of the individuals and the pains of the loving ones who are connected with them. Here we can understand that by illustrating the mother's emotionful heart as a small button, the poet demonstrate the society which devalues the people who died for their country and who are connected with them. Here, the mother's heavy heart, which was flooded with the true emotions, was insignificantly compared to the small button in the uniform. The soldiers and their loving ones, sacrificed and their their feelings are destroyed, and this house is seemingly revealed through this amazing fifth stanza. The maiden, the baby, and the mother are well met with the same phrases: "Do not weep," and "the war is kind." Even the structure of the poem is ironically, it shows the condition of the society which views the war as a useless war as an insignificant thing, and poet strongly proved that the war as a cruel thing which can't give the happiness to any happiness to the people. The famous quote says that war is a symptom of the man as a thinking animal, and war is a game played with a smile in the heart, not in the face, but in smile in the face but not in the heart. And here we can understand that according to this quote, we can understand that soldiers are wearing the mask as a happiness, and uh, going to the war areas with a heavy heart, which portrays the plights and the plights of the soldiers. And we all know that in war there are no unwanted soldiers. So furthermore, if we don't in we can understand that according to the poem, if we don't end the war, finally the war will end our human beings. And it is also very useful example for today's situation, because many countries are trying to start war to get solutions and get solutions, but we have to understand um, this reality. And this poem helps, I hope this poem helps them to understand the real face of the war. And this ironical theme was highly portrayed in the poem. The war is not kind, and it is a hell. Even in the disaster times, we can get many humanity services, but when we analyze in the war zones, the humanity was caged. People in the war ignores the other people, and they see them as their victims, and it is one of the huge mistakes of our human beings. We may think that war can't help uh, people in the country from the country which is against us, but war is, but in my opinion, and according to the Stephen Crane opinion, war is not kind. It is useless, and it takes both sides life. Even though during the war times, soldiers sacrifices their life, they didn't get enough glory as well. As here the mother's heart was compared to the insignificant button in the small uniform. This poem, and for me, I think this poem makes us it's a question that uh, what is the use of the war in this modern era, or uh, in in the past society? We all know that according to many histories, war is a thing which takes many people's precious lives. So it gives us a big lesson that war is not a thing which gives us a glory. Many people are tempted to go to the battlefield because of the uniforms and because of the heroic looks. But from this poem, we can understand that are not the real things in war. As a first-hand reporter of the war, Stephen Crane nicely touches the reality of the war by illustrating the things which are happening truly in the war field by giving the strong visual imagery. Let's analyze the poetic techniques in this poem. This poem was written in a second person point of view, as the poet comes as a narrator or the lecturer lectures the people who don't have enough idea about the war, which means uh, harshness. We all know that many people in this modern society don't have enough idea about war, what means to them. According to this poem, poet hopes to give a big message to the society who didn't have, who doesn't have enough knowledge about the war. And the irregular rhyming pattern in this poem, which was created in a free verse, illustrates the harshness of the war. And the poem starts with a tone of irony, and there are many metaphors in this poem. For example, wild hands and the little souls. Here, uh, where the soldiers are mentioned as the little souls, and their lives are devalued as little souls. The field where thousand corpses lie comes as a hyperbole, which shows the harshness of the war. Uh, Here the dead bodies of the soldiers are indicates as the corpses, uh, which indicates that the society values the soldiers' living body as the corpses, not as a glory one. So the battle god is an allusion which indicates the Greek god of mass, Greek god of war, and drill and die comes as an alliteration, and alliteration. Humble as a button comes as simile, as I told you earlier, the mother's heart, which was filled with the feelings of heavy hearters, was illustrated as a symbol button in the uniform. And the color imagery is successfully used in this poem, as the poet employs the yellow color to indicate the yellow fever in because of many young soldiers are died in the battlefield in America, where Stephen Crane was born and have the first-hand experiences in the war. And in because of the yellow fever, he also died. Moreover, this poem is very rich in visual imagery as well, and this poem is written in a free verse. Let's analyze the themes of this poem. The plights of the dying soldiers is the most significant theme here. The plights of the soldiers and their families are made theme, which is depicted by the poet by emphasizing that war is kind in a paradoxical way. And here, the dying and the reeling of the soldier also indicate the sorrowful and the sympathetic life of the soldier, which creates the gloomy mood to this poem and gloomy mood to the readers, and asking the readers to consider the harshness of the war, concluding that war is best described as kind, especially if even though if it takes these kinds of life and even though it's gives such a harsh things, now also many people think that war as a glory and dying for the country is very uh, very patriotic activity. And the poem The Soldier also indicates that fact, but here uh, Stephen Crane successfully analyzed this poem, create this poem to um, create this poem to give us a lesson that war is not a kind thing. And thank you for hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Arnavi Sridhar, to your wonderful presentation. It will be help us in future. And thank you, Master Sugandhan Sagitin, for your presentation on the topic in the Eagle. Now, thank you to all the presenters to the valuable presentation. And thank you for spending your precious time for all of us. And I would like to thank to our literature sir, Mr. Achudan Jogaraj, to give us a chance to bringing out our skills. And